So hi everybody. My name is Steve, and my talk today is entitled "Soiling the World: The Poetics of Compost from Ovid to the Anthropocene." Compost names a substance, and we just were hearing about compost actually in the previous section, and sort of interesting to think about how some of these terms get moved around in different discourses. So compost is any kind of substance that decomposes into become soil. It makes me think about the smelly parts of my garden, which is the picture you have up on the screen right now. And it also makes me think about my body and animal bodies more generally. Corporeal soil is filled with the humus of humans and other creatures, animal and vegetable creatures that decay into the soil. So when I die, which hopefully won't happen too soon, my body will decay and eventually my flesh will return to the ecosystem as nutrients in the soil. That's true of all of us. The process through which decaying matter fertilizes the soil is known as composting or composture. The practice is probably as old as agriculture, although the earliest written records we have of it, at least the earliest written records that I'm aware of, come from Cato the Elder's Latin treatise De Agricultura, written around 160 BCE. Proponents of the idea of a long Anthropocene, which is an argument that humans have been modifying the planetary climate since the dawn of agriculture 12 millennia ago, will treat composting along with burning as basic technologies that humans have been using to restructure the local and planetary environment for millennia. But since in addition to being a body made out of compost or future compost, I am also a literature professor, I want to start today with my favorite passage about compost in Shakespeare. And so I'll give you that first. The sun's a thief, and with his great attraction robs the vast sea. The moon's an errant thief, and her pale fire she steals from the sun. The sea's a thief, whose liquid surge resolves the moon into salt tears. The earth's a thief, and that feeds and breeds by a composture stolen from general excrement. Each thing's a thief. These lines from Timon of Athens present ecological connection as universal theft. Each celestial body preys on each other body. Maybe some people here, all right, I can't advance my slides. Maybe I can do it this way. Oh, there we go, good. Maybe some people here were fortunate enough, as I was in February 2020, just before the big lockdown, to see Catherine Hunter play the part of Timon at Fort Greene in Brooklyn. What her performance, which is the image I'm showing here, is it was a performance of a tiny woman embodying Shakespeare's tragic rage, howling defiance at the world that wanted to churn her body into general excrement. For the Elizabethan playwright, that word excrement means not just bodily waste, although it does also mean that, it includes that, but also a broader sense of any kinds of things that emerge from other things, the way that hair and nails emerge from human bodies. The general excrement of the physical world feeds and breeds through composture. That's the process that soils the earth and makes the soil. Things change into other things. Shakespeare learned his poetics of composture from the Roman poet Ovid, whose book, The Metamorphoses, and this is a couple editions of Metamorphoses that I have at home, published in 8 CE, over a century after Cato the Elder wrote about agriculture, represent the major text in the Western literary tradition for physical transformation. The opening lines of Ovid's epic emphasize that his subject is physical change. Lacking the time for the Latin, I will share instead the text that's on the right of your image there, the gloriously overflowing 14er couplets of Arthur Golding's 1567 English translation, the favorite of Shakespeare and of Ezra Pound. And so here's the opening line in Golding's translation. Of shapes transformed to bodies strange, I propose to entreat, ye gods vouchsafe, for you are they that wrought this wondrous feat. I love Ovid's opening lines for the focus on physical transformation as the key phenomenon that connects humans to divinity. We know non-human powers, the poet tells us, because we recognize the mutability of our bodies and our environments. He's not quite writing about soil explicitly here, but soil and plant growth are a kind of recurring, overflowing feature of the poem. A little bit later in book one, the poem burrows down directly into a description of soil, and I'll quote a few more lines here from Golding. As soon as that the moisture once caught heats again the sun, and that the fat and slimy mud in moorish grounds begun to swell through the warmth of Phoebus beams, and that the fruitful seed of things well cherished in the fat and lively soil indeed, as in their mother's womb, began in length of time to grow. You can feel in these lines, I hope, the muck between your fingers, fat and slimy, heating and growing, moist and generative. Ovid's soil brings forth life through male heat, in this case the sun god Phoebus's beams, entering into female moisture. The key action is growth that arises from eroticized conflict. So far, so productive. But in the few minutes I have left, I want to turn to one particular well-known Ovidian transformation in which the nymph Daphne becomes the laurel tree. And I want to select this episode because I think it makes two important points about the poetics of compost and the stories we tell about physical change and the growth of soil. First, the violent combination of heat and moisture that for Ovid is the master trope of generation functions through sexual violence. Ovid tells stories of change through patterns of male pursuit and female flight. Laurel trees, as I'll explain in a few minutes, are born from attempted rape, in which the god Apollo chases the nymph Daphne through the woods. Not all of the change, love, pursuit stories are as violent as this one, but they all grow out of this conflict-ridden Ovidian soil. Second, the Apollo and Daphne story represents the birth of art as well as the creation of soil. The laurel tree into which the nymph gets transformed becomes the favorite symbol of the god of music and poetry. Apollo uses laurels to crown emperors, athletes, and poets. To wear the laurel means to bear the god's message of clarity, order, and perfection. The laurel emerges from the terrified body of transformed Daphne. It's an ugly origin for an artistic ideal, just as the composture of decay is an ugly origin for the generation of soil. So very quickly in the last couple minutes here, I want to run through two contemporary translations of Ovid, both written by feminist women. Jane Allison's first translation, Change Me, published in 2014, and then Nina McLaughlin's From Wake Siren, published in 2019. And I'll start with Allison. Allison drills down in her translation of Ovid to Daphne's desperation and the urgency of her plea to the river god, her father. Change me is the imperative at the center of this story, and of course also the title of her book. Transformation becomes the seed of poetic movement across the next half dozen lines. So this is Allison's description of the moment in which Daphne transforms into a tree. Words barely uttered when slowness sleeps in her limbs, delicate bark nestles around her soft breasts, her hair fans into leaves, arms lengthen into branches, the feet just so quick sink down, sluggish as roots. Her face turns to leafy crown, all that stays is splendor. The English verbs sparkle with physicality, seeps, nestles, fans, lengthen, sink down, turn, stay. In becoming the laurel, Daphne literalizes the process of composture. Her flesh becomes the vegetable landscape. She's not just newly composted, but also gorgeously beautiful. Splendor is the word that Allison uses. Apollo loves her this way, the poem continues. And then in McLaughlin's prose version, I think she takes the next step and shows something sinister in the beauty of Daphne as the laurel. McLaughlin emphasizes Daphne's experience of transformation as loss and as hardening. All my muscles stopped moving and all feeling drained out like sap seeped into the earth, the nymph explains. The transformation desexualizes her. My legs, which moments before had burned in flight, fused together. My hips narrowed. All over my skin, a surface of papery bark. Having exited the vulnerable world of female flesh, she gloats in triumph over the rapist god. I'd won. Stick your dick in this and you'll get splinters. For McLaughlin, Apollo's adoption of the laurel marks his continued possession and perpetual assault. I'm going to wear your leaves in my hair, he whispers to the tree. I'm going to have you on me all the time. The laurel shakes, excuse me, and rustles her leaves, but that movement, horrifyingly, becomes a symbol of both his victory and her imaginary consent. Because I was victorious, Daphne says, I'd won. I shook and shook as if I were nodding, as if I were telling him yes. The bitterness of entrapped Daphne as tree captures feminist rage, and perhaps also the voiceless anger of a plant world violated by Anthropocene fires. These modern retellings of the transformation of female nymph into trophy tree represent, as I suggested earlier, both a physical allegory of how masculine violence reshapes the landscape, a story that we now call the Anthropocene, or the age of humanity, and also a painful parable about the birth of art. Both stories describe a kind of composture, the physical and symbolic transformation of living flesh into symbol-bearing vegetation. And I think I can probably stop there, and I'd be happy to open it up for questions with the rest of the group. Thank you.